Hello, my name is Anthony Stratus with Daisy Outdoor Products, and today we will be disassembling and reassembling the Model 1903 drill rifle. Okay, tools used for disassembly and reassembly are a large pair of nippers, a 3/16 hex wrench, a 9/64 hex wrench, and a 1/8 hex wrench, a 3/16 straight punch, a 1/8 inch straight punch, and a small tapered punch or nail set, Phillips head screwdriver, hammer, a couple supporting blocks could come in useful, thread locking compound, and an oil for material preservation and rust preventative. Okay, first thing we're going to do is remove the stacking swivel and the sling swivel using our 1/8 inch hex wrench. We'll remove these screws and the swivels will pull right out. Next we'll be removing our stock band using our 3/16 punch and hammer. Place the punch on the roll pin and tap it through. Now we'll remove the roll pin and the stock band will slide forward. That then allows us to remove the front sling swivel retaining band, the rear sling swivel retaining band, and the top fore end. Okay, next we're removing the 2 screws retaining the trigger guard with the 3/16 hex wrench. We'll remove the front screw and the rear screw. Once these are loose, this will allow us to remove our assembly from our stock. We'll take the trigger guard off and the stock will lift right up off the assembly. We can set the stock aside. Okay, next we'll be removing our rear swivel ring and swivel plate using our Phillips head screwdriver. Underneath the swivel plate is a swivel retaining spring. It's a thin piece of metal. I want to pull that out of there, make sure you don't lose it. Next we'll be removing the butt plate by way of 2 Phillips head screws. Once the 2 screws are removed, the butt plate will pull right off. Next, we're removing the barrel assembly from the receiver. We're going to use our 3/16 punch. There's a pin here holding the barrel to the receiver. We're going to punch that pin right on through. Once the pin is removed, you can pull the barrel to separate it from the receiver assembly and then slide both your swivel retainers and your front band off the barrel. Okay, next we'll be removing the bolt from the receiver using our 3/16 hex wrench. There's a bolt retaining pin here that we'll remove. Once that removes, the bolt can come out of the back of the receiver, and there's a spring inside the forward hole. I'm going to tap the receiver down, make sure we pull that spring out. Next, we'll be removing the rear sight from the receiver using our 9/64 hex wrench. There's 2 screws in the back that we'll take out, and the rear sight will pull right up and off the receiver. Okay, next we're going to be removing the retaining pin and the handguard ring. The retaining pin is a pressed pin that has knurlings on it, and once removed, those knurlings are typically damaged. So if you remove it, make sure you replace it with a new one. Now in order to get this out, we're going to need some help. I'm going to use my big nippers. Grab a hold of the pin with 2 hands. Go ahead and cover that with the rag, that way we don't damage it. And go ahead and smack it. And that pulled the pin out. It's a bear, so it's better to get some help on that one. Once the pin's out, you can take the retaining ring off. Our small tapered punch or nail set, and our 1/8 inch punch. What we'll want to do is get this pin started in the hole before using our straight punch by using the tapered punch. So we'll use the tapered punch and get the pin to start. Once the pin starts down in the hole, we can then feed our straight punch down into the hole and tap the pin out. Once the pin's out, the front side will slide right off the barrel. Okay, for reassembly, we're going to start with the receiver assembly. We will start with the bolt. We're going to drop the bolt spring down into the hole. The bolt inserts through the back of the receiver assembly all the way forward, and we'll secure it together using the bolt stop and our 3/16 Allen wrench. I want to make sure and put a drop of Loctite on all of the bolts during reassembly. For now, I'm going to go a 1/4 turn past tight, and we can list torque specs at the end of the video. Next, we will install our rear sight onto the receiver using our 9/64 hex wrench. Don't forget the Loctite. Okay, next we can reinstall our receiver handguard ring. There's a groove in the receiver handguard ring. This groove will face forward towards the barrel. slides on. We will take a retaining pin and using our hammer, tap it all the way down until it's seated. Next, we can install our front sight onto our barrel. The barrel has a flat on it on the back side, and the blade of the front sight will be 180 degrees from the flat. So flat on the bottom, front sight on the top. And we'll just tap that pin in using our hammer. After you tap it in, make sure it's centered. You don't want one side sticking out too much. And now we can secure the front band onto the barrel. The front band has a offset hole to one side. That offset hole is going to be to the back side of the front sight. We can then install our front band small and front band large. And when you put these on, they have a nut on them. Doesn't really matter which side the nut's on, just make sure the nut is on the same side for both bands. Now we can install our barrel to our receiver assembly and hammer in the pin. Again, make sure the pin is centered. And that is it for the receiver assembly. We can move to our stock assembly. You can install the butt plate back into place using its two Phillips head screws. Make sure they're flush and not protruding anywhere. Okay. Next we will install our rear swivel ring. Firstly, we'll put the swivel spring plate in with the hump facing outward. We're going to lay that down in the hole. And then our swivel ring goes in. The swivel ring has a slight break, or where the two ends come together and touch. That touching ends go to the inside. We don't want them on the outside, they could pull open. So we orient them to the inside. And our retaining plate sits right on top. We will then secure it to the stock using the two Phillips head screws. There's no Loctite used when screws are going into plastic. Only when screws are going into metal will we use the Loctite. Okay, we are ready to fit our receiver assembly to our stock. Place the butt end in. We'll push all these forward. orient your ring to fit down into the stock. Everything should lay flat. And what we'll do is take our top 4N handguard and we're going to put this lip here right in the lip of our retaining ring and close it down. To hold all this together, we'll slip our first band back and into place. We have a couple of retaining notches there to slip over. The small band on and the front band in place. We can then secure the front band in place using the knurled pin. Start it in the hole and tap it in with the hammer. Again, make sure it's even on both sides. You can then turn the rifle upside down and place the trigger guard onto the stock. We have 2 screws, one long and one short. The short one goes in front, the long one goes in the rear. We're using our 3/16 hex wrench. Do not forget your thread lock. A little bit will do you. You don't need to use too much. Okay, next we'll be installing our sling swivel and stacking swivel. I'm using our 1/8 inch hex wrench. A little bit of thread lock on those screws. Might have to squeeze this together to get it going. They are sprung open a little bit, being placed over the stock as they are. And that is it. Test the function of the bolt by operating it forward and back. Look for loose parts. Everything looks good. Keeping the surface finish of your rifle in good condition and free of rust is always important. Applying a light oil or a rust preventative spray after each use is a good idea. I've got a rem oil on hand here. I'll just spray a little bit on a rag and wipe down the metal assembly parts of the rifle. Fingerprints and other handling can cause rust over time, especially while they're in storage. So wiping down all the exposed metal parts is always a good idea. It's going to go a long way into keeping the finish looking good and rust free.